What is going on, everybody? What is going on? The Catch Fam, my name is John Dawson, and in today's video, we will be breaking down 5 must-start wide receivers for Week 5 of the 2023 fantasy football season. If you guys are new to the channel, this is all we do here all year round. Free fantasy football content, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. So if you guys are into that, be sure to subscribe on the way in. But more importantly, get in the comment section down below anything that you guys need: starts, sits, trades, waivers, roster reviews, whatever it is pertaining to the 2023 fantasy football season. Let me know and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. But let's not waste any more time. Let's hop into today's video. All right, number one might surprise you guys, but I'm going to roll with Garrett Wilson this week. I think he's a very solid flex option in this matchup. If you guys watched the running back video, I also really like Breece Hall this week. Listen, this Denver Broncos unit defensively is awful. They got a little bit of juice on offense, but it just doesn't matter because his defense is like historically bad. I mean, literally just awful. And yeah, Pat Surtain is a great corner, and Garrett Wilson could face a lot of Pat Surtain in this game. But man, the way that the Broncos have been scheming things, like Pat Surtain is not staying with the number one wide receiver in a lot of these matchups. So, it's an away game for the Jets, but I still think that the Jets are going to be able to keep up in this game. Zach Wilson looked competent last week. And, I've been telling you guys since week 1, like Garrett Wilson's upside has dropped tremendously since the Aaron Rodgers injury, obviously, right? But I don't think everything is lost for Garrett Wilson. And when we look at his stats so far, fantasy-wise throughout the year, 9.8 or more fantasy points in every game. Obviously, the 9.8 against New England, not great. But other than that, 14.4, 16.3, and 15 last week. So ultimately, he is still a decent enough floor play and a good flex play. And man, this Broncos unit coming in as 26 in the league against the wide receiver position from a fantasy perspective, they're just awful. Let's just face it. We are going to be starting running backs and wide receivers and quarterbacks and even tight ends against this Broncos unit throughout the rest of the year unless something drastically changes, and I don't think that's going to happen. So if you own Garrett Wilson, I do think he is a solid flex play and a player that you might want to pull off of the bench moving into week 5. All right, so you guys know for the purpose of these videos, I mean, we're not talking about Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen, Puka, guys that we're starting on a weekly basis. We're looking at players on the bench who could be in your flex, or maybe players that you just might not have as much confidence in who need to stay in your starting lineup. So, we just talked about Garrett Wilson. Let's talk about Romeo Doss now, who I think in some people's eyes is going to lose a lot of value because of Christian Watson coming back to, closer to full swing, and Christian Watson being productive in that first game last week as well, while being on a pitch count. But let's not forget about Romeo Doss, who gets a great matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday Night Football, who are still in the bottom 10 against the wide receiver position from a fantasy perspective. Let's just face it, this Raiders defense is awful, except for Max Crosby, essentially. And listen, Romeo Doss, your wide receiver 15 in full PPR right now. Yes, Christian Watson's going to eat into this volume a little bit. I am a big fan of Christian Watson, don't get me wrong, but I talked about this a lot throughout the offseason. Romeo Doss is going to be that security blanket guy for Jordan Love. We heard a lot of buzz about their chemistry throughout training camp and everything, and that has come to life. I mean, he has 25 targets in his last 2 games, 12 targets in week 3 and 13 in week 4, and ultimately 18 or more fantasy points in his last 2 games. I just don't think Romeo Doss is going to completely fade away. It's a great matchup. The Packers are coming off of a tough loss. The Raiders are just simply put not a great team. These teams are going to be neck and neck throughout this game. There's going to be scoring in this game. I like this matchup a lot from a fantasy perspective, but man, if you own Romeo Doss, don't just bench him because Christian Watson's coming back into the mix. Romeo Doss, if anything, could see more opportunities and see things open up because defenses now have to account for Christian Watson, especially in the red zone. So Romeo Doss, like I said, don't just bench him because of the Christian Watson factor. He's a guy we need to strongly consider, especially at the flex spot, moving into week 5. All right, next up, I want to talk about Michael Pittman. And for a lot of you guys, Michael Pittman probably a must start already, but he's coming off a really bad performance. And where he got drafted in a lot of leagues, he could certainly be on your bench. So 4.5 points last week against the Rams. It's kind of faded away in that game for whatever reason. Just 5 targets after having 11 or more targets in the first 3 games of the season. But guys, this is a home game for the Colts. And I just said it, 11 or more targets in the first 3 games of the season. I'm still a huge fan of Michael Pittman. I think the chemistry with Anthony Richardson will come back to fold. And if you didn't know, the Tennessee Titans are not good against stopping the pass. They are not good against opposing wide receivers, okay? They're 24th in the league against the wide receiver position in fantasy football. And I mean, yeah, if you know anything about the Titans, they wake up every day. Mike Vrabel asks them, are you going to stop the run today? And are we going to hand the football off to Derrick Henry? And everyone on the team says yes, and that's all they need to be worried about. This team is just never good against the pass under Mike Vrabel as a head coach. They were awful last year. They're going to continue to be bad this year. Like I said, a home game for the Colts, so I like that advantage there. But I think Michael Pittman will bounce back in big fashion. I would not be surprised to see him get double-digit targets in this matchup. He should be locked in the flex. He will have a much better week than last week. To scratch last week, don't think about it. Michael Pittman, a great start moving into week 5. All right, next on the list, I've got Zay Flowers going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, whose secondary has just simply put been atrocious this year. I mean, this unit's been bad against their run, and they've certainly been bad against the pass as well. Similarly, the Steelers are coming in as the second worst team in all of fantasy football against the wide receiver position. So I think Flowers will bounce back this week. You know, we had the big game week 1 against Houston, then an okay game in week 2 with 10 points, and a better game in week 3 with 13 points, and a disappointing game in week 4 against the Cleveland Browns with just 8 fantasy points. And ultimately, if you took away that one long reception he had, it would have not been a good game whatsoever. But I think Flowers will bounce back. You know, I'm not worried about, like, is Odell going to play? Is Nelson Aguilar going to be out there? Is Bateman ever going to do anything this season? It doesn't matter to me. I don't think that the defensive pressure is going to matter at all here. The secondary is awful. Zay Flowers is the wide receiver 1, unless we're counting Mark Andrews in the equation. But man, I've been a big fan of Zay Flowers throughout the offseason. And all I'm saying is, you know, last week, maybe you shook your confidence a little bit. Don't let it shake your confidence this week. The Steelers secondary is just bad. It's a great matchup. Zay Flowers is a great flex option. That's all I really have to say moving into week 5. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm spicing it up a bit with this last pick here. I'm going with Rashid Rice against the Minnesota Vikings. And there's a couple things to break down here, but the Vikings, the 3rd worst team in the league against the pass, 30th in the league against opposing wide receivers. From a fantasy perspective, this secondary has just been trashed throughout the whole season. Like, we want to start wide receivers against the Vikings secondary. We already know that part. But when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, like, who do we really want to start is the question, right? I mean, if you have Travis Kelce, then that's one thing. But we have all kinds of players. I mean, we have Sky Moore. We have Kadarius Toney. We still have MVS lurking around. Justin Watson, Justin Ross. I mean, Jared McKinnon out of the backfield. There's plenty of guys who catch the ball, and overall the volume for pass catchers on this team has not been good this year. But the wide receiver who leads the team in targets this year and leads the team in receptions is Rashid Rice. So I'm going to take a gamble here and say, first of all, if you're in a tough spot, if you're in a deeper league, then Rashid Rice is a good pickup and a good start this week. For all the reasons we just went over, right? Someone has to catch footballs for the Kansas City Chiefs at the wide receiver position. Like I said, so far, Rashid Rice leads the team in targets and receptions, and this Vikings secondary is abysmal. Somebody is going to have a big game. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's risk here. It could be Sky Moore maybe pops up this week. Maybe Kadarius Toney is healthy and learns how to catch footballs. Maybe that chemistry from the playoffs and with MBS shows up in this game, or maybe this is just a pure Travis Kelce game. I don't know, but I think if you're in a tough spot, Rashid Rice is rostered in 48% of leagues according to Sleeper. If he's out there, he's worth a flyer in the flex. 3 more targets than any other wide receiver on the Chiefs last week. Listen, there's risk here, but man, if you're looking for some upside, or if you're in a really bad spot, just due to the matchup alone, I do think that Rashid Rice is worth a start moving into week 5. That'll do it for today's video. If you guys did enjoy the content today or find it helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. This is all we do here all year round. Free fantasy football content, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. If you're into that, consider joining the community. But please get in the comment section down below if you guys need anything, starts, sets, trades, roster reviews, whatever it may be. I'm here to help you guys. I'll get back to you guys as soon as I possibly can. And with that, I will say, thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.